Hello, I'm Steve Lentini, and I'm your host for Different Thinking for Different Times. Season 3, Episode 26. Here's a quote from Richard Bach. Every person, all the events of your life are there because you have drawn them there. What you choose to do with them is up to you. That's a great quote. Imagine the small-minded thinker reacting to everything that occurs in their life instead of understanding life is feedback. They created it on some level. Instead of asking what it's there for and what's it here to teach me and what can I learn from this person that bothers me, why do they bug me so much, and what can I do differently? I think what is a better question than why. But what you choose to do with them is up to you. That's what Richard Bach says. And you have to prove these ideas to yourself. But the small-minded person is reacting and then telling everybody the story about what happened to them. And as Werner Erhard once said, they're victims of circumstance instead of masters of circumstance. That's above the small-minded thinker, or what I call the acorn brain. Here's another quote. Ernest Holmes once said, "We shall cease to suffer as we more and more comply with the laws of the universe. All suffering is the result of some infringement of these laws." Well, one of the infringements is being the small-minded thinker. And if you've listened to other episodes, or perhaps this is your first episode listening, the small-minded thinker, we have examples of it all throughout history and right up to modern times. In fact, it's all around us today in the news media and in our political leaders. I mean, both sides pointing fingers at each other instead of negotiating and working together. It's like we've become a society of making others wrong, and that's small-minded thinking. Now, I had a near-death experience that taught me so much about the divine being in the now. That's all there was the now. There was no past or future. When I left my body from intensive care on November 18th, 2002, the divine, immediately knew I was one with everything and nothing. And I didn't have the acorn brain that said, wait, I don't have a body. Oh my God, what am I going to do now? And none of the judgments went with me, none of the small-minded thinking. That's what taught me how valuable it is to think limitless and not be a reaction, not living as a victim of circumstance, becoming the master of my brain and my thoughts. Because the divine, there was only the now. I couldn't connect the events together. There was like a scene and a scene and a scene. First, knowing I was one with everything and nothing. Then a life review, and only the good I had done was mentioned. Now, the small-minded thinker reacts like, well, Steve, come on, there's sin and hell. And no, that's not what I experienced. Maybe the small-minded thinker will experience that. And I had always questioned that about my religion at the time. When I grew up, I was born a Catholic, was going to be a priest. Thankfully, I met a young woman who changed my mind because I knew I couldn't be a Catholic priest anyway. And that put me on a search of many other philosophies and religions and faith. And it seemed to me none had the franchise, so to speak, from the infinite, whatever created this miracle and mystery we live in. And of course, when I was on the other side, there were no religions, no sexes, no races, no sexual preferences, no mention of right or wrong. Fascinating. It's as if Baruch Spinoza in the 1600s, he changed his name later to Benedict Spinoza, but it's as if he knew in the mid-1600s. If you Google the God of Spinoza, you'll be amazed at what he wrote. It seems like he came here with that knowing, like he remembered, because he had come from the infinite like we all do. And of course, we are shaped by our experiences and our parents and all the conversations at home. And I can tell you, my parents never talked about race, only people's names, people they worked with. And we grew up not thinking about people's races. And my family never worried or talked about someone's sexual preference, or it was just not discussed. We just learned acceptance, not tolerance, acceptance. That's infinite thinking. My mother, God rest her soul, was an infinite thinker, a big-minded thinker. And my father must have went along with it. He was very quiet, but he never shared any of those negative things you hear out in society so much, defining people. I mean, after all, we're really just one race. And if we were all the same, it'd be boring and we certainly wouldn't learn anything. And so the differences are here. There were no opposites on the other side. Nothing from here was there, which also taught me to live from the inside out, learning I was always seeing what I believe as opposed to believing what I see. And the small-minded thinker is easily enrolled in railing against everything they disagree with, and it doesn't matter what side you're on. All we're seeing is intolerance, and that's small-minded thinking. And it's even from our leaders. And so think about it. Think about expanding your small-minded thinker and into the infinite thinker. The other thing was, again, there was no past or future. There was only the now. That's where the divine is, even and especially in the moments and in the people that bug us. That's where the great growth is. And the people that have big differences from our own little acorn brain. But you have to prove that to yourself. And that's my job in these recordings, and my job since I had that near-death experience almost 19 years ago. I'm so grateful I had that, and so grateful I came back to teach what I learned. But again, you have to prove it to yourself. Don't take my word for it. There's been examples all through society of people blindly following so many small-minded thinkers. I shouldn't have to remind you of all the instances, and it occurs today. It occurs today, right in front of us. Prove it to yourself. Expand into limitless thinking and let go of making others wrong. Enjoy the differences. Be glad they're here, because that means you're alive. Any questions? Steve at stevelentini.com. Steve at Steve, L as in Linda, ENTINI.com. Glad to answer any questions. If you'd like to be a guest on the show, come on, share your like-minded experiences or share how you disagree. And remember, I might ask you, does that sound like small-minded thinking? Thanks.